I want to just take you back to what we have dealt with in the previous sessions. We spoke about goodbye hypertension, and we gave you certain principles. And what I did say to you, and I'm repeating this, is that we're actually building information on information on information so that you could see the bigger picture at the end with basically every one of these lifestyle diseases. So the way that we would deal with cancer, for instance, the basics I've laid with regards to how would we deal with hypertension, the whole inflammatory thing, the whole insulin thing. What we have found at our lifestyle centers is when I get blood sugar levels stabilized, that's where we start heading for healing. It's really such an amazing principle, because when that is sorted out, the inflammation processes just vanish. So yeah, we spoke about goodbye heart disease. Now this afternoon we will be talking about goodbye diabetes, and it's the words, and this title is very carefully chosen. I want you to know that after the 20 years of experience that I've had working with this, I can now say goodbye diabetes, because I've seen it so many times where it's really just reversed, and we should not be struggling with that. I wish we had time to look at things like cancer, and we have time to look at things like arthritis and depression. I mean, those are all big killers, but the principles are basically the same. And we will allow for some question and answer periods, sessions, you know, or time this afternoon later, so that we can, if there's more specific things we need to deal with, we'll do that. So our last session for this program would be talking about goodbye obesity. And once again, a common denominator when it comes to all of these lifestyle diseases. So let's focus on goodbye diabetes, and I once again just want to ask you to bow your heads and do a prayer with me, and ask God's presence. Father, we can say nothing, we can do nothing if you don't guide us and you lead us, and we are in such a need of you this afternoon. Once again, we ask, Lord, that you would really touch our brain cells, that we would have the ability to make good cognitive decisions around these matters that could make a difference between us, you know, having a lifestyle disease or not. And I pray for everyone that's here, and that's everyone that's listening to these recordings, that you would be the one that would activate the healing processes. And we give you the honor and the glory for being such a great God and the great physician. In Jesus' name we thank you. Amen. People, I want us to talk about how to disarm diabetes today. And we're gonna just show and share the good news of how to prevent and how to reverse diabetes. This verse is not unknown to you, I'm sure. It's one of my favorite verses, Exodus 15, verse 26. And the Lord says, He says, if you will obey me, and by completely doing what I consider right, and by keeping my commandments, I will not, I love this, I will not allow you to have any of the diseases that I've brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, the one who heals you. And so we looked at this in the earlier sessions. We said, you know, with heart disease, that's the fact. When we looked at hypertension, that's the fact. When we looked at diabetes, I mean, when they took these Egyptian mummies and they took them through these scans, when they dissected them, wanted to find out what did they die of, they died of this list, and many of them died of diabetes. Today, many people are dying of diabetes and diabetes-related problems. And there's an explosion of new cases. It's really soaring to record heights at the moment. A few years ago, somebody said to me, you know, in the next 5 years or so, we're going to see a tremendous explosion with regards to diabetes. I've heard sources saying there's going to be a tremendous explosion about cancer. And I must tell you, that is the reality. We see it today. It's going to double within in the next 25 years. This stat is a little bit old. You know, the trend is just soaring above this values. There's about 328 million people that have diabetes in the world, and that's 2013 stats. So we're like 4 years later. I don't have the newest stat. They don't keep this up all the time. 8.3% of adults in the world are diabetics. That's nearly 10%. I want you to know that 1.5 to 5 million deaths related to diabetes. And it's increasing every day. So it's not something that we can keep a blind eye to. We cannot just say, you know, at least it's not in our family. Diabetes in Africa, 15 million diabetics in Africa. I mean, this is scary stuff we're talking about. About 70% do not know that they have diabetes. We still have to bring those stats together to really see the bigger picture. And there's numerous causes for this. It's also increasing every day. 3.5 million people, 6% of our people in Africa. 12% in the Indian population. 9% in the colored community. 6% amongst our black people. 4% amongst the white people are really suffering from diabetes. Those that we know of, those that we have the stats of. The largest analysis of health trends around 188 countries from 1990 right up to 2013 revealed a striking rise in diabetes of 45%. In America, the rise was 71%. So you can just imagine, this is just the explosion. Coming back to PE, and let me give you the stats. This is March 2017. Now, how many months back is this? 5, 6 months back? Diabetes, the biggest killer. No more HIV, no more heart disease, no more accidents. The biggest killer in the Bay is diabetes. And guys, I want to tell you, this is a sad day for me to say, guys, in this, you know, enlightened time that we live in, that so many people are dying of diabetes and diabetes-related issues. It should not be like this. We know more, and it could be different. Now, for many years, there was no known cure for diabetes. But that's not the case anymore. Today, many people are disarming diabetes by making healthful lifestyle changes. It's happening all the time. What is diabetes? I think it's important to start off and look at, you know, what is diabetes? Diabetes is a disease that occurs when the body becomes unable to handle glucose. That's now the sugar that we take in what we eat, which builds up now in dangerous levels in our bloodstream. And over time, these high blood sugar levels, they are extremely taxing to the body, resulting in dramatic increases in the risk of death and disability. Now, there's different types of diabetes, and the most common one is type 2 diabetes, accounting for about 90% of all diabetics. And it's usually the older people that gets this type of diabetes. So mostly, you know, when we go past the 50s and we're reaching, the middle 50s, 60s, you know, most people would now be at the point where that is one of the things that they would be diagnosed of. But the sad reality is that there is an increase in children being diagnosed with with type 2 diabetes. And this is alarming. It's really, really alarming. It really comes down to lifestyle-related choices. You see, we have to make choices every day. I have to make choices. By the way, I need to state this, that in my case, recovering from terminal cancer, I only had 6 months to live. I had a stage 3 lymphoma. And from that point to where I recovered from cancer meant no compromise for me in lifestyle. I had to make very serious decisions, and I must say I'm sticking to that. By God's grace, I'm making good decisions every day. So there's certain things that you would try to tempt me with, and that you would offer to me, and it just would do nothing for me, because I know what it is to feel sick, and I know what it feels to feel good and have energy. And by the way, I would not go back to the point where at one point I was hoping that I'm going to be alive. I mean, it was just, the pain was too much, the discomfort was just too much. There's a point where I was scared I'm going to die, and there was a point where I was scared I'm not going to die. And I don't want to wish this on my worst enemy. So I'm talking to you straight, and I should have done this in the earlier sessions, but let me just get assurance I've got my audience with me. Can I call a spade a spade? Can I just talk straight and the truth? Yes. Can I see your hands? All right, I love that. If you say no, just bring it around the bush, then I'll bring it around the bush. We'll take the long route, but you're saying I can call it a spade a spade. So let's do that. Guys, when we talk about type 2 diabetes, it's not insulin shortage. It's an insulin blockage problem. So there is enough insulin available. By the way, we see a lot of variations on this now coming up in the last couple of years. The fact is the pancreas is providing enough insulin, but somehow the insulin cannot get its job done to unlock that cells, to open the door so that the glucose can go in. So something blocks it, and that's what we're going to talk about, and really causes a lot of havoc. When we talk about type 1 diabetes, it is basically a totally different disease altogether. It is insulin dependent, so it means that the pancreas is not supplying the right amounts or no amounts of insulin to open the cells so that the glucose can go in. And this accounts for about 5 to 10% of diabetics. It's affecting them. And it means that they have to now take an insulin shot, and it's just basically a skin shot that's taken. And they have to now regulate this on the amount of food they ate, the amount of sugar they used. It's known as an insulin-dependent diabetes. And these diabetics typically develop these diseases as children or young adults. And they're usually thin. They're not, they're normally not overweight. And in today's talk, I want us to focus on the type 2 diabetes. So the non-insulin dependent diabetes. If we can focus on that area because of our time restraints. So how does diabetes work? You see, glucose, and that's what we take in. You are all aware when you eat carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is a very, very easily changeable sugar from the carbohydrate sugar to glucose. And that's why if you even would just chew on a piece of bread, within a few seconds as you chew, it will start becoming sweet in your mouth. And it means that digestion already takes place here in the mouth. So it converts the sugar into the glucose, and it does it in the presence of insulin. So insulin is really needed there. Insulin is a hormone that's needed to convert the sugars and starches and other foods into energy. And it works like a key. I mean, you've got a door and you've got a lock, and then there's a keyhole, and there's a key that fits into it, and it fits exactly in there, and only the key that fits there would actually be able to unlock the lock. Are you with me? And so this is really how the insulin works in our body. So the key needs to fit into the lock and unlock the door, and when the door goes open, the sugar goes into the cells. So where do we want the sugar to go? Into the cells. But if that doors aren't opening, or the door locks are blocked up, the doors can't open, and then there's a buildup of sugar in my blood. And this is what we measure when we take a blood sugar test, is that there's a raised amount of sugar in our veins and our arteries. So yes, with type 1 diabetes, there's not enough insulin to open the doors. But in type 2 now, we've got the problem where there's enough insulin, but they just can't get these doors open. And we're going to have to now really just unpack this and see what is the problem. So what is the warning signs that I might be running into a problem? And this is important to know, because there's no confusion about these symptoms. It's not like with all these silent killers like heart attacks and hypertension. This one we know. If you've got, excessive thirst, you're thirsty all the time, and it's amazing how many times after I've presented this presentation where people would line up and say, you've just showed me the symptoms, and I might be diabetic. And then I would say, and my advice would be, so I'm saying it because I know there might be a row of people saying, okay, what must I do? I'm saying, what you need to do is then, if you see these symptoms, you need to get a fasting sugar test. What we're saying is, don't eat and then go for the test. So go for a fasting test. So, eat what you need to eat tonight, and tomorrow morning, first thing, you go for a sugar test. And if there's a raised sugar level, we know, okay, there's a problem. Another one is excessive urination. So you can see this two goes hand in hand. So if I'm just pushing water consumption all the time, it will mean that I'm going to urinate more, and that would be a sign. Or excessive appetite. And that goes hand in hand with weight gain. So those are the signs, the warning signs that I need to look at. What's really very important for you guys to know is this, that these warning signs sometimes very subtle. They're very subtle. And up to half of people don't even know that they have diabetes. This is our biggest challenge in our society. I mean, you would advise people certain things, and they would say, but I'm not a diabetic. But as you will see at the end of this session, if we summarize this whole thing, a lot of our diseases is really hinging on this problem that we don't have our sugars nice and stable. So many become aware of the disease when they begin to experience potentially irreversible problems. Like, I've got some issues that I don't see well. Or, there's some problems with my kidneys. Or, there's a problem with circulation. And it's only then when the signs are there that we see there's a problem. So as this disease of diabetes progresses, it affects are really devastating, affecting all our organs of the body and gradually destroying them. And people, I am putting a lot of emphasis on this specific session because I want you to know most of the diseases, like heart disease, like cancer, they all related to this problem of sugar. I mean, you saw in my previous sessions, chronic systemic inflammation, insulin, raised insulin levels, these are the big problems. And yes, we will look at that. Now, what's some of the complications when I've got a diabetic condition? Eye problems. Now, once again, those little capillaries there, the back of my eyes, long, thin capillaries. Blood can only go through the single file cells at a time. That is because of the high sugar levels, it gets clogged. The sugar cells makes the red blood cells all sticky. They can't get through. They build up, and it really causes a lot of havoc. Same with our kidneys. Serious kidney damage because of the high sugar levels. And then we see heart disease and stroke. It's a potent promoter of even osteosclerosis. So it really causes plugging of the arteries. 2 to 4 times higher risk of getting a heart attack. There's other complications like wounds won't heal. And I find this with a lot of our older people. They would have an ulcer there, and it also would just go bigger and bigger. It will just not heal. It won't close up. If I do not, refer back to this during the session, you remind me afterwards that I just tell you some of the stories, some of the experiences we've had with this. So yes, the wounds that we said, they don't heal up. And the fact is that that people that have diabetes actually lives 8 to 10 years shorter than other people, their peers. And it might not make a big difference if I've got bad quality of life. It might not make a big difference. But guys, let me tell you, probably 20 years back, I would have looked at it just differently because I was in a lot of pain, I was in a lot of discomfort. But today, with the quality of life, I'm saying, 100, yeah, we come. Are you getting what we're saying? And we are saying, I'm not living for myself only. I'm gonna be there for my children's children. I'm going to be a good grandfather for them. It's not just about me. Life is not just about me. Life is about the people around me. Life is about my children and my children's children. And I have a reality. I mean, some people might say, okay, but so what if I just live 10 years shorter? Because, life can be I'm not going to use the word that some people use, but it's going to be a not too good experience. Especially you start walking with a crutch, at 60 and all that. Oh, guys, it can make a big difference. I've seen many people changing their life, and instead of at 60 walking with a crutch, they would only walk at 90 with a crutch. I mean, I've seen over the years the reality of this. So, some of the other typical side effects of diabetes, and it increases your chances of sexual impotency. I get a lot of men coming to me and saying, Eish, Pastor, hydraulics don't want to work anymore. Wife is very upset. She thinks I'm walking around. Help me, I'm in trouble. And it's actually very simple to sort this out. It's really very simple. Ulcerative sores. Let me just tell you one experience. Working closely with some of our Meals on Wheels branches, and one of the branches we've trained the nurse that really looks after some of the old people there, the senior citizens. And she said to me one day, she said, please just come and look at this. I mean, she's the nurse. She said, please come and look at this ulcer. And I looked at this open wound, and I asked the auntie, have you been struggling with this for a long time? 12 years, she says. 12 years it's open. And I said to Aniki, now, that's after I walked to another room, and she said, okay, what must I do? I said, well, what I've taught you. We're going to do hydrotherapy, hot and cold treatments. We need to get the circulation going. We need to get the sugar stable. That's obvious. And then let's get some charcoal detox packs on there. and I need her to get into the sun. And people, you can just imagine, 10 days later, she phones me and she's in excitement. I mean, this nurse is in excitement. She says to me, you have to come down. I said, emergency. No, you have to just come. And I come there, and for the first time in 12 years, this wound is closed. And this aunt is just smiling from ear to ear because she's never thought this could be happen. People, I want you to know, people are suffering out there unnecessarily. If we could just use the knowledge that we're sharing on their behalf. So infections is a big problem. And I want you to know this is totally related to inflammation. Diabetes is totally, and we'll get there. Amputations, so because of the bad circulation, what happens? Certain parts of the body dies because there's no circulation, and it starts with the toe, and then it goes to something else, and then it goes to some, and many times it's the foot, and it gets black, and what do we call it? And gangrene, and we mark it and we cut it off. I mean, that's the only option. And I want to say to you, we can prevent this. Breast and uterine cancers are totally related to sugar levels uncontrolled. Now, keeping your blood sugar levels near to the normal range is the best possible defense against complications of diabetes. And we need to keep it in a range of not more than 6 and not lower than 3. We need to just keep it there in that range. That is the normal range where we want to keep it. Now, what causes this non-insulin dependent diabetes? What causes this? Is it a matter of genetics? Question. My mother was a diabetic. So, it's very likely that I would be a diabetic. And, I hear this all the time. My uncle was a diabetic. And my brother's a diabetic. I want you to know that we've got some great research on this. The Pima Indians, a certain population group, very prone to diabetes. They live in the southwestern United States. Half of the adults, they suffer of type 2 diabetes. And, it's just the same from one generation to the other. By the way, it's just getting worse. And you find that they're living in a Western society. And I want to tell you, we are finding now that the genes is not the culprit. It's not the prime culprit. It's the Western diet and our lifestyle. And it actually caused diabetes into an epidemic, really into an epidemic. Now, how do we say this? How do we know this? More and more researchers now find and concluding that hereditary is not destiny, especially if you eat well and you exercise. There's a combination. I always say to people, there's a package. When you want to recover from cancer, it's not going to be one or two isolated elements. It's not going to be this muti and that thing. It's really not as simple as that. It's a package. And I've learned there's basically 8 principles that you have to follow. Now, let me give you an example. A closely related tribe to the Pima Indians live in Mexico, and they have an active farming lifestyle. They eat from the ground, the things that they have grown. And the interesting thing is, they've got basically no diabetes in their midst. There's basically no diabetes. So is it genes? Question. Guys, we cannot. This is our scapegoat. It's been our scapegoat saying, it's the genes. I am built with this. We need to think out of that box. We need to think wider when we start talking about this. So what is the problem? When you look on the screen, you will see that there's an artery there, and you'll see that there's red balls in there, and that is really showing blood cells. And then there's blue balls, then we want to just say, okay, that is our glucose. Where do we want the glucose to go? We want it to go into the cells. So we've got little doorways on our cells, and the more active we are, the more cells doors we do have. The less active you get, it's just the way God has created us, you would have, it's economy that works here, there will be less doorways. And that's why you would find certain things happen when you start exercising. You know, you might have a pain here in the side. Have you felt that? When you're unfit and then you start exercising, you have this pain in the side. There's certain things that happen in your body where the body now tells the cells, guys, we need to now replicate doors. We need to get things going. And this is why fitness takes a time to get to the right point. So these little doors open up and the glucose goes into the cells. What happens is, when I'm inactive, less cells. What happens? The blood sugar levels now rise because there's more sugar in the cells, in the bloodstream. It needs to go into the cells, but there's not enough doors to actually let it in. And so this is part of this whole type 2 diabetes issue. So there's just a picture of the artery, and you can see, you know, there's some glucose in the cells, but now with the blockages, it's going to happen that there's now a rise of that in my arteries. And it builds up in the bloodstream. And it starts damaging the walls of the cells. And this resistance to insulin appears to be directly related to certain lifestyle factors. And people, I cannot emphasize this enough. We have to take responsibility. Now, this is a typical cell, and I want to just share with you how this insulin thing works. You'll see there's the pancreas, and the pancreas is actually producing insulin. Insulin, as you heard me saying, is a hormone that is very, very active, needed. I cannot take the sugar into my cells if that hormone is not active. And so you can see on this picture, you can see the cell doors, and you can see that insulin now, coming from the pancreas, is like the key that needs to fit into the lock, and it unlocks the door, it opens the door, and the sugar will go in. So insulin is manufactured in the pancreas. Unstable blood sugar is equal to receptors or doors becoming blocked, not opening up. That's what is insulin resistance. So insulin is there, pancreas is providing it, but it's not fitting in. There's something that's blocking it up, and that is type 2 diabetes, and that is our responsibility. We need to help the system to really open up these blockages, and we sometimes just help it to get more blocked. Many of the more typical diets that we have prescribed to diabetics actually cause people to have more insulin resistance. And what we find out now is that, you know, if you were prescribed by a dietitian that you need to have small little meals, 7 small little meals during the day, you have to have that small. No wonder our people is just not recovering from insulin. From diabetes, because it actually causes insulin resistance. So if you would go to a diabetic clinic like, and I work closely to these guys like the Groote Schuur diabetic clinic, you would find the guys would put people on a maximum 3 meals a day. No more 5 to 7 meals, short, small meals. They would say, eat, you know, we put people on a 2 meal a day at our programs and our lifestyle centers. And the result is just amazing. Within 4-5 days, we see amazing results. People, I have promised you, I will call a spade a spade. I'm going to give you the secrets. People say, how come you get this done at the centers, but you don't get it done when I do it at home? This is the secrets I'm sharing with you as we go on. So when insulin attaches to that receptor, then it activates an enzyme. And that enzyme activates another 2 enzymes. This now all happens on cell level, and which means it activates 2 more enzymes, and it takes 4 enzymes to allow the glucose to actually enter into the cell. Now, it sounds very complicated, but if I would eat a holistic diet, as God has prescribed right in the beginning, we see that all those enzymes are actually present, and this whole process happens. When I start eating the Western diet, where I buy the things from the shelf, from my big outlets, my Pick n Pays and my hypermarkets and whatever, Checkers and whatever, and I buy from those shelves, those things are tampered with. The enzymes are not there anymore. Many of the food, the way we prepare it, the enzymes aren't there anymore. And this is the basic reason why this just couldn't happen. I need basically 4 enzymes to make this door open up with the insulin, and this package would allow me to get the sugar going. Now, I want to put it more practical because I want you to understand this. What you're seeing on the screen is a cell, and you'll see there is a little pink little receptor door there. And you'll see that there's on that receptor door, there's a specific form. Insulin will fit on that form exactly like that. And it will be able to open up, unlock, and that will unlock the blue door that is the glucose door. So what are we saying? I need insulin to open that door, and what else do I need? At least 4 enzymes. And if that happens, the door will open, and then the glucose will go in. So there's another picture where you see, okay, the insulin actually connected well on the door, and the door is in this case not blocked, because Lifestyle now actually could block that lock where insulin does not fit into it. It won't fit, it's blocked, it's gummed up. And Lifestyle does that. And then you see, okay, now this insulin opens the door, the doorway opens, and the glucose goes in. On the third picture, you see the glucose really goes into the cell, and where do I need the glucose? Right there in the cell. That makes me being able to talk to you just now. It helps me to think clearly because I need glucose. By the way, 25% of the glucose I've derived from this afternoon's meal, 25% of that is going to my brain, and that makes me, being able to talk to you in the way I do. Now, let's just talk about the cell in insulin a little bit. I made a statement earlier today, and I said, your tummy fat does not lie. Now, I've learned this the hard way. We sometimes have these very complicated ways of trying to derive or come to a certain point. And I've just learned, very simple ways. What we're saying, if there's a little choopy around there, it does not lie. It tells me a very important message. It tells me that there's sugar levels that's unstable. I've got an uncontrolled sugar level. That is why it is there. Now, our healthy pancreas, the beta cells would spit out insulin. Every 14 minutes, it would have a spurt of insulin. And it just does that. Our body is just, created to do that. But when my pancreas gets tired, what happens? It spits out a little bit here and then a little bit there because it tries to pick up. And what complicates this whole problem is the way that we live. I mean, we don't eat at meal times. Western society don't eat at meal times anymore. When do they eat? Anytime, all the time. When I see food, I eat it. I mean, I asked one person, so how many times do you eat a day? I eat once a day, all day. And this is our problem. You can just understand this is our problem. So the tired pancreas is just not doing its thing. We want our blood sugar levels not to go higher than 6, and it should not go lower than 3. And people, I need a slow release energy level, slow release glucose level to help my sugar level to just stay there. And you can see the graph that you're seeing on the screen now. That is where we want your sugar levels to be. You can see there, 5-6 hours, the timeline at the bottom, starting at 8 o'clock, here after 1 p.m., it's now 2 p.m., the sugar levels have not crashed. It's still up there. It's still beautifully in the normal range. This is where we want it. But now what do we do in our Western society? And many of us are guilty of this. We don't have a breakfast because we don't have time. You know, we have to rush to work, and we have to still go to this and do that before we get to the office, and you know, the traffic, and yeah, I have to still drop the kids off, and so I don't have breakfast. And so what happens? And you can see that graph. You see the sugar level drops below the 3. Now I'm at work. There's no kitchen there to work with all the supplies in the cupboard. So what do? Tea time, I go to my work's cafeteria. If it's a student, I go to the cafeteria. If I'm somewhere else at the school, I go to the tuck shop and I buy a snack. And what does the snack do? It's normally loaded with sugar. It's normally loaded with fat. It's normally loaded with salt, sodium. What happens? It spikes. It shoots up the sugar the moment it gets there on top. And by the way, while it goes up there, it's soaring up there, my body is now pumping insulin to try and sort out this big rush of sugar. And it normally over secretes insulin. And now so it comes down, and because of the over insulin levels and the sugar that has no fiber in it, it just crashes. And what happens? I feel weak. It's 2 hours later. I feel weak. What do? I get another snack. So I have a cup of coffee, or I have a sandwich. And what's on the sandwich? It's a white sandwich. It's something that's got no fiber. It's going to shoot up the sugar levels again, and it comes crashing down. And keep in mind what happens to the insulin levels. It's just going to flood insulin. And by the way, that causes, the high insulin levels causes havoc in my system. Now my body tries to counteract that again, and it's just got this domino effect all the time. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about this chronic systemic inflammation that is part of the problem. So people understanding blood sugar levels, my tummy fat tells me the blood sugar curves are not normal. It tells me. It shouldn't be there. Overstimulated pancreas produces too much insulin when the blood sugar rises rapidly. And the brain registers every sudden rise of insulin. So, you know, because of the rise of glucose, I've got a rise of insulin levels. My brain registers this. Interesting things that happen here. It reprograms the cells in order to stop too much insulin from getting into the cells. Can you see where this whole insulin resistance starts? This is where it starts. And so its goal is to stop the insulin from damaging the cells. We don't want, because it actually burns on the cells, burn holes on the cells. So this now changes the excess glucose that's there, because now where does it go? It changes it into fat. And where do I store the fat? Chupi. It's the closest to just go and store it on Chupi. And so you can see, it's just this domino effect. It's just like, you know, the one thing leads to the other. No wonder, you know, we have to go on these diets and they just don't work because we don't address the problem. I mean, the diet tells you, eat little pieces here, and we actually help this whole insulin resistance thing. We just help it on. We're really in trouble. Triglycerides rise, and this is really what, in which form fat is stored in the body. And the risk factor for heart disease now increases. Further domino effect. My HDL, my cholesterol clearing, that is lowered. I mean, it must be higher, then it's lowered. And so that increases my heart disease. By the way, you know the difference between HDL and LDL. HDL is the good cholesterol. LDL is the bad cholesterol. So HDL is lowered while it should go up. And my LDL should be lowered, but that shoots up. And that causes a lot of problems. And then the sodium balance in this whole process is getting unbalanced. And so what happens? My BP goes up. My blood pressure goes up. Now, people, what I'm trying to say to you, in the past, we would get at the centers, now, operating now for 20 years, 17 years, operating formally, but, I've been busy with this for longer. We see that in the beginning, we've had a case where it's an isolated diabetic case. We never find that isolated cases anymore. When a person comes into our lifestyle centers, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 problems plus. So it will be diabetes plus hypertension plus this, and it makes it so complicated, really complicated. Now, I want us just to talk about this raised blood insulin levels. You have heard me saying, raised glucose levels, what happens to my arteries? It gets damaged. Are you with me? Raised blood sugar levels is going to cause damage to my organs. I want to state to you, because of this raised sugar levels, insulin secretion is raised, and that level of insulin higher than it should be causes damage. So that causes kidney damage. That causes damage to my blood vessels, leading to heart disease, leading to eye and nerve damage. You can see these things go hand in hand all the time. It goes hand in hand. And it's now shown to be start of nearly every chronic disease known to man. If we talk cancer, sugar is the problem. And this is why certain people in this cancer world will tell you, guys, never use any refined carbohydrates. No, use any refined sugars. No sugars in your diet. This is part of the reason. Heart disease, things like diabetes, aging, arthritis, osteoporosis. The list goes on. It is directly linked to all these diseases that's known to us. Now, there's something else that's now coming up in our new research, and I am blown away with the new research that we have. I mean, it's like people are starting to think out of the box. They used to just there. Now things are happening. Something that I've been praying for years, where the researchers are now saying, guys, listen. And you know what's so exciting is things that I knew long time ago, the researchers now say, hey, that is the story. I say, yeah, but this is what we've been saying all the time. And the resources I get it from, it was set like in the 1800s. And it was available to all of us sitting here. And we've just not been looking at it. We've just not been reading it. Now, I want to talk to you about glycation and raised blood sugar levels. Let me explain this to you. When your blood sugar gets too high, your organs really get toasted. Now, I can see some eyes just like, okay, toast, organ toast. And I'll tell you literally, this is what happens. Now, let me explain this to you. The process by which this happens is called glycation. And glycation is the process where sugar chemically combines with protein or a fat. And then, you've seen this. I mean, if you toast your bread, what happens to it? It becomes brown. And when it's over toasted, it gets burnt. That process is glycation. This is what we call it. So this is why we call it glycation. So the carbohydrates in your bread, that's high sugar. It's just a complex sugar. That's heated up, combines with the protein, and that's why it makes that brown toast. And by the way, it's not too good to toast your bread to get your bread too well done. That glycation process actually causes carcinogenic agents. So it can actually cause cancer. All right, so keep that in mind. So what happens is, when your sugar levels now go higher, it combines with the protein and actually gets toasted right there in your, and this is what happens to your organs. So when the bread is in the toaster, you see it combining with that. And when you caramelize onions, ladies who've done that, it becomes brown. Yeah, you've done it. You know what I'm talking about. This is exactly what happens on cell level. So in your body, when you have too much sugar, the body can't use the sugar fast enough, and the extra sugars reacts with the proteins in your cells, and the proteins becomes toasted. And this is a trigger to a lot of these problems. A lot of these problems. This creates nasty substances called advanced glycation end products. We call it AGEs. AGEs. Advanced glycation end products. We've got now ways of testing these things in people, and it really makes things so much easier to see where we go with this. So it is AGEs that cause your nerves to be tingly, and you have that numb and painful feeling, especially with diabetics. You know, they would have this tingling feeling in their fingers or their legs, their feet. There's another thing I need to talk about, and that's sorbitol. Now, indications are that when blood sugar is controlled, or uncontrolled rather, that the sugar gets converted into sorbitol, which is an oxidant. Now, it is said that sorbitol is responsible for most of the G-degeneracy associated with diabetes. Interesting, at this time of the day, my tongue is really getting sticky. And some of these words are very hard to speak out. And we've got a lot of new research on this, amazing lot of new research on this. So it's an antioxidant, or oxidant. Remember, we need antioxidants. We don't want oxidation to happen on cell level. But this guy is actually causing what? Oxidation. And so it causes, this process of oxidation actually causes inflammation. Now you understand why I'm saying every disease, when we talk heart disease, when we talk hypertension, when we talk diabetes, it is really connected. Cancer, it is connected to inflammation in the body. Now, sorbitol found in products such as chewing gum and sweets and ice cream, cough syrups. This is where we find them all. It's broken very slowly by our body and can cause bloating from gas-producing bacteria in your intestines, and it's got a major effect on our immune system. Now, let me give you an example of what happens when I've got raised sugar levels. If you have no refined sugars or carbohydrates in your diet in a 24-hour cycle, no refined sugars and carbohydrates, your little white blood cells, they act like little Pac-Man. Wop, 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 wop. You remember those old TV games? I wasn't much involved with that. I just saw other people, you know, with that. Now, our little white blood cells are like these little Pac-Man. They can gobble up 14 times and then it dies. Now, watch this. Watch this. If I have 6 teaspoons of sugar in a 24-hour cycle, my little white blood cell can only gobble up 10 and not 14 times. Are you hearing? If I've got 12 teaspoons of sugar in my diet, it can only gobble up 5.5 times, then it dies. People, if I have 18 teaspoons of sugar in a day's time, it goes whoop, whoop, dead. If I have 24 teaspoons of sugar, it goes whoop, dead. Where it could have gone 14 times, gobbling up 14 bacteria. And we are loaded with bacteria all the time with the way that we live. So you can just imagine what happens to our immune system. It really causes havoc. And it's real. It's real. I want you to look at the following little clip, and you'll see how real this is. This is a real live blood analysis under a microscope. And so you'll see there's a bacteria, small little dinky bacteria, and then you'll see one of these phagocytes, one of these white blood cells just running after this, and you'll see the red blood cells in the blood. And so just watch this little video clip and you'll see what happens there. So here the guy goes and he's after this bacteria. There's more than one. You can see there's more than one. That's in the blood, live blood analysis. And there he goes, and he's not going to let go. He's going for that bacteria. That bacteria potentially can kill, and yep, I've got him. But it meant that he could have only done that once if a person has 24 teaspoons of sugar in a day. Now you might say to yourself, gee, who's eating 24 teaspoons of sugar a day? And I can see in your faces, you are saying that. I mean, are you crazy? Who's going to eat 24 teaspoons of sugar? Now, let me give you an example actually how easily this is. How many teaspoons of sugar do you think there is in 1 tin of Coke? We don't want to say too loud because there's some Coke in the fridge at home. 1 tin of Coke, guys, have 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar. It means 2 tins of Coke, I'm on 24. Are you getting what we're saying? We're not talking about the cake you're eating. We're not talking about all the sugar that you put in your coffee and on your cereal and that is in the cereal. Please, people, if there's one thing I can really challenge you with, start reading labels. These guys are so clever. They won't put sugar under one label. They put it on 5 different labels. We are loaded with sugar in all our refined foods. That's why I don't buy food from the shelf. I just can't afford that risk. We need to make good decisions. So every time there's a sudden drop in my blood sugar, the brain computers registers the fact, and it thinks there's famine. And so what does it do? The most efficient way to save fuel is to change the sugar into a fat and pack it around the tummy. Tummies don't lie. Tummies don't lie. You might say to me, well, we just built like that. Our family is built like that. I just want to tell you, tummy fat does not lie. You see, the brain receives almost 25% of the oxygen and glucose from our blood. It needs a constant supply of both sugar and of oxygen. And swinging this blood sugar means poor brain function. By the way, this is one of my pet subjects. This is why we present the Brain Power series at our universities and our schools. And it is really so powerful there. We teach children to really just keep their blood sugar levels stable so that our brains just work optimally all the time. And this is one of the reasons why we make such a lot of nasty mistakes all the time. So our blood sugar curves, people, it takes about 45 minutes where it's gone out of norm, it's too high. 45 to 75 minutes when it comes back into norm before our brain actually works optimally. But by that time, it's crashed again. What I'm trying to say to you, a large proportion of our society is not utilizing the brain ultimately because this is the issue. And I've got so much research now to really prove what I'm saying. I can now say to students, I can guarantee you 25 IQ points because I've got the research if you just follow this principle. And that is cutting out refined sugars and carbohydrates. So this swing up and down means the brain function always under par. I mean, we're not going to really work well. Now, recognizing blood sugar spikes, let's talk about hyperglycemia. Now, you'll know there's a difference between hypo and hyperglycemia. And, hyperglycemia is when you're feeling that sluggish feeling after lunch. I can see many of you feeling like that just now. You actually need a nap. By the way, I normally call this session the graveyard shift. I don't like this shift because it's not easy to speak to dead people, but yeah, I'm not saying you dead, but you hear what I'm saying. That normally happens after lunch. And, food cravings, even after eating, especially fatty, sweet, or refined starchy foods, that goes with hyperglycemia, feeling generally bloated, tired, or fatigued during the day. That goes with that. Constipation, headaches. Many people struggle with this. When we talk about hypoglycemia, there's impatience, there's irritability, a feel of jittery, shaky, even lightheaded feeling, craving snacks between meals. I just need a snack now. That will get my mood sorted out. You're upset. This goes hand in hand. You need to eat now. I can't wait another hour. I'll fall apart. I'll faint. And what's the boss is going to say when I faint? So I need to have something. And then, we need sweets, or you've got cold sweats, and you have ringing in the ear. Those are some of the things that you would see with that condition. Now, let me just talk to you about the psychology of diabetes quickly, of type 2 diabetes. Conventional medicine, the allopathic model, most commonly calls it the dysregulation of blood sugar control. This is what they call type 2 diabetes. And the normal treatment for this is pills. So you would have pills, and if that doesn't work, then they would administer insulin to try and get these levels in the normal range. Now, some say the real problem is improper insulin and leptin signaling. And I'm talking from the medical point of view. This is what they're saying. And these two decide how much food you eat as well as your body weight. So you have to now balance that out. And your practitioner needs to figure out, what would be the dosage to really get this. And by the way, they don't have the time to do this, so they will send you to the diabetic clinic. And these guys are more stable, more set up to really help you to start stabilizing this problem. It is said that to be primarily caused by diet that is too high in sugar and refined carbohydrates. But to put it simply, we know that the glucose gates in the cell wall, that little doors, can't open so the sugar builds up in the bloodstream. We know that is the problem. And we sometimes overlook a very simple issue like this. Now, I want to just talk to you about carbs or fats or both. Studies now, dating back nearly a century, noted a striking find. This is very interesting. If you take young, healthy people, you split them into two groups. Half of them you put on a fat-rich diet, and the other half you put on a high-carb diet. Within 2 days, the glucose tolerance skyrockets in the fat group. It just skyrockets. What I'm trying to say to you, we've always just associated this with sugar intake. But now we're saying, okay, no, there's another thing, a factor that we need to realize is that fat plays a big role in this whole thing. So the same was done in the sugar challenge. So they split the guys in two groups, and they gave this guys a high sugar diet and the other one not. And those that had been shoveling fat ended up with twice the blood sugar levels. So as the fat goes up, blood sugar spikes. And it would take scientists nearly 70 years to unravel this mystery with a very special MRI scan that they did. And it is known that fat can also cause insulin resistance. And this is why we're saying, guys, it's not only the sugar, we need to look at our diet, we need to look at the fat. This mechanism wasn't known until fancy MRI scans, and these techniques were developed, and they've actually used people to see what happens on muscle cell level while the scan was done while they were consuming this to see what happens on cell level. And that's how they found out that raised fat levels could also cause insulin resistance, a big reason of insulin resistance. It stopped the glucose from going into the cells. And that's part of our big problem. And this is what we need to talk more about in our next session. So the resistance can happen in 160 minutes from just one hit of fat. So I eat one fast food, not mentioning names, from one of our outlets where I drive in the one side and drive outside the other side. 160 minutes from there, insulin resistance. Now guys, we cannot run away from this anymore. It's really big issue. You can get the same effects in healthy teenagers. They did the opposite experiment. When they cleared the fat out of their diet, insulin resistance dropped drastically. I mean, the MRIs showed it clearly. It just dropped, and the resistance dropped proportionally to the amount of the fat in the diet. So the hypothesis is the following. If fat gums up that little door locks, those insulin receptors, we know that excess sugar gets converted into fat and it's stored around the tummy, and then it's possible that the gumming up the receptors from the glucose, the carbohydrates, is not actually from the glucose, but it's from the fat that has been created by or from the glucose. Can you see the domino effect? It's really just crazy how we are seeing new research now. So people, what we are saying is this. Obesity and excess of fat is now demonstrated by research main reasons for our diabetes explosion. It's really part of it. Because our foods that we buy from the shelves are loaded with refined carbohydrates and refined fats. And the more fat there is in the diet, the more difficult it is for the insulin to get glucose into the cells. So diabetes is rare in areas of the world where fat intake is low in the diet and where obesity is uncommon. Inactivity is another problem. Now, do you see the same pattern? Did you see the same thing with hypertension? Did you see the same thing with heart disease? Same story. Inactivity. A sedentary lifestyle is one of the primary contributors to obesity and insulin resistance. Just very fact. If I only use this muscle, what's going to happen? Remember, our cells are regenerated all the time. It's not going to be, rebuilt with all the doorways. And so it means the sugar is just going to build up, and it's got a domino effect. Once again, too many calories, too little exercise. So we eat all these calorie-rich foods, a lot of food on our tables. By the way, very little nutritional value in many of it. And we've got too little exercise. Because we drive with our car, we don't walk anymore. We don't go up the stairs anymore. We go with the lift. You're getting there. Guys, just, we need to think out of the box. I do a lot of visitations at hospitals and so on. And the one hospital that's got quite a few steps, and I've learned this over the years, is Tygerberg Hospital. You know it. And I've made a decision. When I go to my visitation, I don't use lifts. I use the steps. Now, I must honestly say to you, and I try to do it as fast as I can, when I get to the level where I get to, I have to, get my breath back before I go in to see the person. It's reality. I mean, we have to do it. But what an experience if you just keep on doing this. Any way to reverse diabetes? To reverse diabetes? Is there any way to reverse diabetes? I want us to start wrapping up. Guys, nearly 100% of time it's caused by lifestyle and thus need to be reversed by lifestyle. This is it. I know, and I found out in my own life, the fact that I got cancer was not a lack of chemotherapy. It was lifestyle. Are you getting what we're saying? The fact that I get diabetes is not a lack of this or lack of that. It's a matter of a lifestyle issue. There's no other way. Pills and insulin offer symptomatic treatment, but do not address the core issues. It does not address that. How do we disarm? How do we disarm diabetes? What can we do to disarm diabetes? Numerous studies suggest that a comprehensive lifestyle approach is the best defense to protect us from this disease. And it is the only way to get it controlled and reversed. It's the only way. It is the only way. There's no other way. So what we are saying is, in short, eat a low-fat diet. Eat a low-fat, and that is really not as simple if you're just going to buy from the shelves. So we need to think out of the box. When less fat is eaten, the sensitivity to the insulin is gradually restored. And it happens sometimes so quickly. We've had one case a couple of weeks back where parents phoned us and said our son, 23 years old, suddenly was diagnosed with diabetes. There's no history. It was like overnight. Something triggered it. And within 1 month, it was like from 10 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams of medication, and it was still unstable. Next option is insulin. And the moment, you know, the guys know, the moment you go onto that route, you stay on that route. And so they opted to go for, you know, the alternative and come to one of our centers. And yeah, I tell you what, I just once again praise God for His healing power. Because once again, I saw God in action. Because only 4 days, the mother phones me and she's excited. She says, the miracle has happened. You would not believe. Now, I was like not making the connection at one. I said, what do you mean? And she says her son's name, and then I recognized what she's saying. And she says, now, I didn't have contact with the center where he is in for treatment. And she says, his sugar is stable. 4 days. And it's now weeks later. And this young man's got no sugar problems. He's on no medication. His sugar is 100% normal. But you know what the interesting thing is? Very rebellious young man. Don't tell me what to eat. He's now cooking for their family. And they're saying they've not eaten so good in a lifetime. And he's cooking for the family and saying, guys, let's do it this way because we've taught him how to do it. People, we have to make some changes. We need to go back to the original diet. Let's go back to those fruits and those vegetables, those whole grain stuff. We really have to, eat a high fiber diet. It plays an amazing role. What do you think? What keeps the blood sugar levels nice and stable for 5 to 6 hours, not feeling hungry at all in between? It's the fiber. The moment you eat refined, shoots up the sugar, crashes. You need fiber. Our Western diet dictates that we don't have fiber in our diet. And we've got a lot of repercussions out of that, like constipation and all of those things. Big problem. We need to go for the whole grains. Don't go for something that is tampered with by man. I mean, we tamper with things. We sell the brand to one guy and we make money, and we sell the germ to somebody else and make money, and then we send the endosperm to the bakery and we say, bake us bread. But God has designed it in a package. We need all three of those components. The reason why we have such a lot of challenges. We need to, guys, have I said this before? We need to set yourself, discipline yourself, control yourself, get on an exercise program. Through regular exercise, the need for insulin injections can often be reduced for those very, very, crisis cases. We need to achieve a healthy weight. I cannot expect to have the choopy and still have sugar levels that's going to be controlled. It's there. And worldwide epidemic of obesity. This is what we're going to have to talk about in our next session. We need permanent lifestyle. People don't go on a diet. It doesn't work. They've got this fad diets all the time. We see cases after 2 years, 18 months to 2 years on these diets, people come in, they've got permanent damage, they've got kidney damage, they've got liver damage on some of these diets. So when you go on these low-carb diet, high-fat diets, I'm not going to even mention names, it's dangerous. We see it, it's dangerous. Go on a permanent lifestyle change. Make a decision, I want to live 100 years. I want to be there for my grandchildren and their children. I want to be there for them. So this is the best approach. Low-fat, plant-based diet. Go for things that are fresh. You can see diabetes is largely preventable, people. And the good news is that those who already have the disease can control it and in many cases even reverse it without drugs by following a healthy lifestyle. If you try these principles, you don't come right, you need to just contact us, we can help you. Guys, it starts with a very simple thing. Sorry for the repetition. It starts with that breakfast. Yeah, there's many times a day, many times in some days where I've got full day programs, and I found the survival mode, you know, being a A-type personality where I run all the time and I have to plan like all the time ahead of time. If I don't have my breakfast, I'm in trouble. If I have a good breakfast, it sustains my sugar levels. The week before last, I was busy with a campaign in the Sea Point area. Amazing experience I've had there. And I had this scrumptious, kingly breakfast. And the first day, I was rushing over to get all the equipment set up and everything. You don't know the venue. And later that evening, when I drove home, I realized, okay, I've only had breakfast today. But there was no sugar searches. There was nothing. And the next day, I was now contemplating, you know, I was going a little bit later, but it's basically at the time where I normally have my lunch there. I was driving to Cape Town. And I said, no, well, it worked yesterday, let me try it. And for that whole week, I had one meal. That was my kingly breakfast. And it kept my sugar levels 100% stable. I'm not saying go on a one-meal diet. I'm saying, guys, if you do this one right, the rest is just, it's a piece of cake. It's really, no, it's a piece of sweet grass. By the way, talking about cake, have you ever wondered why your kid goes for a party and they come back with, next day, running nose, coughing, sore throat, mama, don't feel good. Who's baking cakes? Who's baking cakes? In our audience, who bakes cakes? Ah, come on, B. There's one or two. One say, I'm baking cake. Now, let me ask you guys, are you measuring the sugar that you put into your cake mixture? Are you measuring it by tablespoon or are you measuring it by cupful? Cupful. I've done my summaries. I've done my homework. You know what? One slice of cake, 14 to 17 teaspoons of sugar, one slice of cake. Just look at that white blood cell curve and what happens to your immune system. This is the reason why we're in trouble. Guys, very important facet is to make your breakfast the largest meal of the day. Really spend time on your breakfast. And by the way, we don't have time, so yeah, we don't spend breakfast. I've learned to do a breakfast. I'm on the run. I learned to do a breakfast 10 minutes tonight. I do my preparation for tomorrow morning, kingly breakfast. Now, I don't have the time to follow this up and tell you exactly how to do it. There's a little demonstration that needs to happen, and I'm going to, there's trained people in this group here that can actually just give you a demonstration. So I want to call this group back and say, let's come back at some point, and it doesn't have to be me, and they show you how to make a good breakfast. Can I challenge this group to do this? Where you show our audience how to do a good breakfast. So this meal should include fruits. Even if you're a diabetic, you need to have that fruits. And by the way, more than one. 3 at least. Knowing the principle of making a good breakfast is essential for long-term successful outcomes in diabetes, people. Try and eat at the same time each day. Don't eat here and then there and then that time. If you eat at 8 o'clock, you eat every day at 8 o'clock. Your body needs to know, now I'm going to get my supply. And it will work economically up to that point. Does it make sense? People, I want you to know, if preparation is done well, 10 minutes tonight, I could have the most beautiful breakfast tomorrow morning. At the end of the session, I'm going to give you my email address. I want you to email me. And I'll send you the recipe of how to do this for a starter. Because I know you're anxious to go and start this. All right? By the way, I'm not shy to share recipes. So please just talk to me. Eat enough so that you will not feel hungry until and at the next meal. So if I'm feeling hungry before the meal, half an hour before the meal, I know I just needed a little bit more. If I'm not hungry at that meal, it means I've had just too much. I just need a little bit less. It is essential to keep your blood sugar levels controlled, people, and breakfast is going to do that. Cook a bulk. I mean, if you, and by the way, with the grains, I'm talking about whole grains. Your breakfast should consist of at least 3 whole grains. Don't just use oats. You're going to have a spike. Use 3 grains. We need the fiber to push it over. By the way, don't use jungle oats. You're going to phone me and say, Pastor, you've lied. My sugar's spiked. And I'm going to say to you, did you use rolled oats or did you use jungle oats? Because jungle oats is refined, people. Fiber's taken out. The gym is taken out. We need the whole thing. 3 grains at least. It's going to get your sugar levels beautifully stabilized very quickly. Cook in bulk. I mean, if you cook a nice pot full and just put it in the freezer and you can just thaw it and use it from there. Eat enough so that you will not feel hungry. We spoke about that. With your breakfast, you need to have your omega-3, 6, and 9s nice in balance. And so we're saying, guys, eat your seeds with your breakfast. And it's very simple. Let me give you a recipe. If you have your omegas correctly in your diet, here's a recipe. Use 1 cup of linseed, 1/3 cup of sesame, sunflower, and pumpkin seeds. So that will make 2 cups of seeds. Mix it well. It can just be grinded a little bit in a coffee grinder, just to break the seeds, because some of us don't have enough tummy acid to break the seeds open. Guys, that will equalize. You know what? Hendrik Besaidnout, a guy that's been a big guy, 95 units of insulin within 6 months, 0 insulin, 0 medication for his blood sugar. I've told you about his blood pressure. The sugar thing was the same thing. And one of the things that started making this change, this is what made him think, I must listen to this guy, was just this recipe that he started applying into his life. So enough omegas. Include omega-3 foods in your diet. Reduce the amount of omega-6 foods in your diet. Those are the things that's made with the sunflower oil. You know what? You know what I'm talking about? All our fast foods, that's the problem. These only have inflammatory effects if you don't eat enough omega-3s. And we don't. You know, people just don't eat seeds. I say, why don't you eat it? No, I don't want to chip like a bird. I don't eat seeds. Yeah, that's not food. Oh, guys, we just need to introduce this into our diet, and you'll see a big difference, big difference. You could just use 3 to 4 tablespoons of the seeds that you've just mixed on your porridge. It will make a big difference. You know what? The kids, they just lift off academically. It's amazing because it is an essential factor for communication between cells. That's a byproduct of this whole seed thing. There's some routine matters that I need to share with you. I wish I had more time to spend because I believe this is the crux of it, this whole breakfast thing. But here's some routine things that I need to just make you aware of. Is you need to chew your food well. That's important. This is why you're not going to eat food like white bread. You don't have to chew it. You just bite, swallow. And then sometimes we just flush it down with something we drink. Right or wrong? I mean, it would be the cup of coffee or the Coke or whatever I do, you know. Or I could be very, very health conscious. I could have my glass of milk with it, but I just flush it down. Guys, we need to chew. Because that enzymes that you saw that's needed to make this whole process of the cell doors open, those enzymes I'm deriving from this food I eat. And I need to chew well to be able to get that going. By the way, carbohydrates starts digested in the mouth. Have a variety of different foods in a period of time. Don't have a variety at one meal. Are you there? Yeah. So if you would have watched my plate, and some people do that, I don't watch your plates, but in any case, I had potluck with you guys this afternoon. How much things did I have on my plate? Who watched my plate? I had 4 things. I had enough of those 4 things. Don't have, and it's sometimes difficult because some people, they prepare something special. Pastor, you must taste this patties. I've specially made it for you. And how would I, I can't be negative about that. So I would say, okay, I will put that in a packet and I'll use it tomorrow and I'll taste it tomorrow and I'll let you know how it tastes, We need to just 4 things. Don't have a big variety at one meal. I need a variety in a period. So in a week's time, I don't need when I say to some people, what do you eat for breakfast? I eat oats. Okay, Sunday morning you ate oats. And Tuesday and Monday morning, what did you eat? Oats. Okay, Tuesday, oats. Okay, Wednesday, hey, oats. People, you can't just eat oats. All of these grains have different values of nutrition. You need some sorghum. You need some buckwheat. You need some millet. You need some quinoa. You need, by the way, we've got 42 grains in South Africa. We don't just have mealies and wheat and oats and mealies and wheat and oats. We've got more than that. You can choose whether you want 2 or 3 meals a day. I'm not saying to you, you have to have this. We know, especially with diabetics, maximum 3 meals. We are saying to you, we've got success on 2 meals. We've got the best success. If I want a controlled situation, 2 meals a day, nothing in between, nothing. A lot of liquids, that's all. Guys, routine matters. The rule is is that when you go to bed, your tummy must be empty. Don't have your big meal in the afternoon. When should your big meal be? Morning. Big meal, no big meal in the evening, no. If you're going to have a third thing, then it's going to be something very small and you're going to eat this at least 4 hours before you go to bed. Can you see the domino effect that we are working back to? Choopy, less. You're getting there. You're getting there. Guys, I want you to know, eat enough at a meal so that you do not feel like eating in between meals. Leave party food for party. I am shocked when I see people eating party food every day, every meal. No wonder we've got all the cancers and all the diabetes and all the hypertension and everything is just skyrocketing. If you want to eat party food once in a while at a party, so be it, it's fine. But don't make this your crinkle packet, boxy little meals every day. You're in trouble if you're going to do that. People, in our food, there should be variety. As I said, you can see this plate. It's got basically 4 portions, or there could be 1, 2, 4, maximum 5. And there should be quite a portion of my plate. It should be, not everything should be cooked. I mean, I grew up in a generation where you cook everything. Am I right? You cook everything. Enzymes are derived from this food that's not cooked. When the moment you cook, enzymes they're destroyed. So we need a more variety of fresh foods. So does what I've just said, does science help me? Yes, the Taiwanese study compared vegetarians and non-vegetarians. The Buddhist monks, that's another study I've got. And there's the research, more protected against diabetes, less glucose intolerance on these diets. The Indian study, I've got these studies, they're profound studies. 165,000 adults, not a small study, big studies, saying, guys, what I've given you today, this is why we have success at some of our institutions. Lacto-ovo-vegetarian and semi-vegetarian diets, those results were compared. We know what the answer is. Lower risk of diabetes when I go onto a total plant-based diet. There's studies on the Adventists in North America, amazing studies. I mean, research worldwide is based on some of those studies. And they found that vegetarian diets protected against diabetes, but they found that total plant-based diets had a much, much bigger result than that. So, good news. Over 50% of the type 2 diabetes can be reversed. Are you hearing us? Over 50% can be reversed. How do we do that? Don't just stop medication. People, I don't want you to now hear me. I'm just going to eat the greenies and I'll be fine. No, that's not what we're saying. Don't take you off your medication. Your doctor prescribed it. Your doctor will take you off that. All right? Don't take you off medication. Tell your doctor, this is what I'm going to do, and we will coach you. We will show you how to do this. And you need to start now. Don't say, okay, I'll start January after Christmas. Christmas might cause your end, eh? Are you getting what I'm saying? Start now. Start now. Saying, I'm going to make a change. Now, I'm getting the cat out of the bag now, and I'm going to tell you a secret. Now, I don't want you to take this secret wrong. Sometimes in our centers, we've got these hard cases to crack. And we've got one or two secrets that we do to get their blood sugar levels stable quicker. I don't want you to take what I'm giving you now and say, oh, so this is how you do it. And you're going to only do this and you don't apply the principles that we've said. Because you're going to have a horrible, horrible, seriously negative experience, and you're going to call me and say, Pastor, you've lied. And I don't like people saying to me, you lied. I don't like that. So I don't want you to make that call. You make the lifestyle change. This is a measure that we put in, and I'm telling you now, this is the secrets I'm sharing with you. So we use cinnamon. And I've had people walk out now at this point, and they just go and buy themselves cinnamon, and they just hoy everything with cinnamon. And they've got serious side effects, and they say, oh, you lied. People, unfortunately, fortunately, cinnamon actually mimics insulin, and it's actually helping to control blood sugar levels. It's the key ingredient that carries out this task, this chalcone polymer, the methyl chalcone polymer that actually does it. That's the key principle that does it. Now what happens is, unfortunately, it's got an irritating oil that's in cinnamon that makes this whole process not happen. And so I'm just giving you now the principle of how getting this irritating oil out of it so that the cinnamon would actually do the good job. Getting it? All right, so what you do is, you would use one box of cinnamon. Don't go and buy a packet. You'll use cinnamon sticks. You'll get it at the Chinese shop or wherever. You'll buy that box, and you will put that into and measure it correctly, where you put 1 liter of water into a pot and you put the cinnamon sticks in the pot. You could boil it for about 10 minutes or so. And then you're going to strain this liquid through a cloth. And what will happen is the irritating oil will actually go and stick onto the cloth, and the liquid go through. And you'll catch up that liquid. And then you're going to make sure that remember there's some evaporation that took place, that you measure this up to 1 liter again. So you're just going to add water again, mix it up. You can put this in the fridge, and you're going to just use 1 tot of this. Not 1 glass. 1 tot. You know what a tot is? I had one guy phone me and say, are you sure this is going to work? Because 1 glass of this is really a lot. Guys, 1 tot with each meal. And guys, it will stabilize that sugar levels very quickly. So that's in the case where nothing works. That's now by the 8th, 9th, 10th day where there's not a change. This is where we will go in and start doing this. We will also advise that people use chromium. They would just take 1 tablet a day till you've used up 1 container. That's it, end of the story. It's not something that you're going to be on for the rest of your life, because we have seen that diabetes actually reverse by this. Another thing that would help a lot is a dose of Brewers yeast or Torilla yeast, and you'll use 1 tablespoon a day. They contain glucose tolerance factor, which consists of all the minerals and vitamins needed to make insulin and processed glucose. So this is really just helpful. So I'm letting the cat out of the bag and saying this is some of the things that we use to make this work. Can diabetes be prevented? People, yes. You saw the stats. 80-90% of the cases, yes, that's true. What do you want in life? Do you want health? Just wave your hand. Who wants health in life? I want it. Who wants joy? Who wants hope? Who wants good family in your life? People, this is what life is about, and I can just shortcut this by, decisions. And I want to really end with this and say to you, it's not too late to make a change. It is not too late. From 95 units of insulin to 0 insulin, August 2012 till February 2013, 6 months. From 95 units to 0. And I've got the testimony, it's recorded. I can share it with you guys. People, you can have quality of life. And for this reason, I make a request to you. By the mercies of God, that you will give your bodies as you will treat it as a living sacrifice. An offering that is holy and pleasing to God. Are you getting it? May God help us. May God help us. I want to end with the fact that you don't have to experience loss of quality of life or even losing limbs because of diabetes, if you are prepared to make a few simple changes in your lifestyle.